Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Ayotte, Secretary LaHood.
Good morning.
I also want to express my concern for your son. It sounds
Thank
like
you.
we've got a contingent of some pretty capable individuals going over there to hopefully resolve the situation.
Thank
but
you.
Until that time, certainly your son, you and your family be in our thoughts.
Thank you
and
very
prayers.
much.
I also want to.
Congratulations on your bridge, by the way.
Well, I was just going to thank you for that. Thank you for your help in kind of breaking the log jam. Hopefully, we can get that
Absolutely.
done in the House.
Absolutely.
And that really is a prime example of how important infrastructure is. And I'll just start out with that. I mean, I certainly understand government is the only entity that really can provide certain types of infrastructure. And in the case of Stillwater Bridge, though, we had to break through a log jam. And the question really is, who should pay for the infrastructure? Should it be the federal government? Should it be the state and local governments? In the case of the Stillwater Bridge, that's largely funded by the state of Minnesota and the state of Wisconsin. So they have skin in the game. And when we talk about subsidizing, whether it's high-speed rail versus highways, what Senator Begich just said is, if we do it right. And I think that's the main question. Who is making the choice of subsidizing things when we're running a $1.3 trillion a year deficit? So, I mean, I think these are very legitimate questions. So I just kind of want to throw that open to you. First of all, in terms of highway spending, again, I'm new to this, so these are the legitimate questions. What is the percent that the federal government provides in funding for basic infrastructure versus state and local governments?
Chris, do you know that percent?
I don't know the current percent. I'm not sure of the current percent, but I believe generally off the interstate, the majority of the funding actually comes from state and local governments, not the federal government. And most of the federal money gets really spent on the interstate and the national highway system. We can get that for you.
I mean, part of the concern, and Senator Ayotte raised it too, is when we make these funding decisions, these subsidy decisions, we really are subsidizing one region of the country or one state at the expense of others. How efficient, how effective do you think that's been going on over the years?
Well, it's helped, I think, build an interstate system. We didn't start in all 50 states.
Right.
You know that. And so was one state disadvantaged over another when they started in New York but not in my home state of Illinois? Well, maybe temporarily. But over 50 years, we ended up with a state-of-the-art interstate system. If you look at transit systems in America, every community has some form of transit, whether buses or light rail or some communities, streetcars. A lot of that was subsidized by federal taxpayers. Now, when one community got one and another one didn't have one, does that mean one was disadvantaged? Over time, I think it's pretty much evened out. And the fact that some things start ahead of other things, eventually, I think the country has benefited from a national transportation view, which almost every president has had, and really Congress has had. When I served on the Transportation Committee for 6 years, we passed 2 transportation bills with over 400 votes in the House and over 80 votes in the Senate. It was bipartisan.
And truthfully, though, a lot of that was bipartisan support going into different areas. I mean, to be honest about it. I mean, again, I don't want to be contentious. Let me, in terms of Wisconsin, for example.
But it did help develop good transportation systems for America.
I'm supportive of infrastructure. I really am.
I know you are.
In terms of Wisconsin, it's high-speed rail. The question came for Governor Walker, and really, certainly as I traveled around the state, a great deal of support for this position. The annual operating cost would be about $16.5 million. The estimate was that you'd cover about $9 million of that by fees and by fares, so leaving about $7.5 million per year to be subsidized by the Wisconsin taxpayer, and they just rejected it. And I think that's the question when you take a look at the articles I've read on the California high-speed rail. We have airlines, and we've already invested in that infrastructure, and air travel can take care of some of that. So again, I just have a real question of how long government can subsidize operations of something that will never, ever be economically viable. And a highway system is different than a high-speed rail system that, there's some real questions as to whether or not those will ever be economically viable and should they be subsidized by taxpayers long term.
Well, I mean, Governor Walker decided he didn't want high-speed rail, probably for the reasons that you just stated. But other governors have said they want it. Governor Snyder decided he wanted it in Michigan.
Well, generally,
And-
generally elected officials do like bringing bacon home to the state, and I think that's part of the thing
Well-
that drives it, as opposed to real honest economics.
Well,
Because
I mean,
they're not going to be around to be paying the bills in 4 or 8 or 12 years sometimes. Their term's over, so they just like bringing them. I think that's a basic fact.
well, but my point is this, Senator. We didn't shove high-speed rail down anybody's throat. We didn't. When Governor Scott and Governor Walker and Governor Kasich made their decisions, we said, fine, you're the ones that got elected.
What we would have liked to
But there was a pent-up demand in America, as I said, for the $2.3 billion in Florida.
I know
there was $10 billion worth of from governors.
for bringing home the bacon.
Not from Ray LaHood, from governors.
And I would say for bringing home the bacon, also to districts, and irrespective of how economically viable those projects would be long-term. Certainly from Wisconsin, we would have liked to have seen that $810 million go toward deficit reduction. I mean, that's certainly where I would have liked to seen it go. Let's just talk about, in general, this transportation bill that we're arguing over right now, in terms of the level that the gas tax is not funding it. I mean, just to kind of restate, what is that amount that's being covered by the OCO?
Half, about half, just generally about half.
Which is about how much?
230 billion.
Part of the, as I've come to town here, realizing part of the reason our gas tax revenue is down is because fuel efficiency is up. And of course, it's politically poisonous to even think about increasing the gas tax to refund that or to refill that revenue stream. Why not look more seriously at utilizing energy resources as a funding mechanism? You know, more drilling in the Gulf, opening up ANWR.
Well, I assume, you know, when the president puts out a pay-for, I assume that's what the debate's going to be about, Senator. That's what they're debating over in the House now. They've had to split their bill up into 3 bills. One of them's transportation, one of them's energy, because they're trying to figure out a pay-for.
Well, I was just asking your opinion. Do you think that's a good idea?
I like the idea the president put out. I like the idea of half of it Highway Trust Fund and half of it Iraq money. I think it's a pretty good formula.
Okay. Well, appreciate it. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank all senators who have participated.